Hey everybody, HomeSliceHenry here, and in today's video, we're taking a look at a brand new Shadow Pokemon in the world of Pokemon Go, XL Shadow Galarian Weezing. These battles were submitted to the channel by a member of the community and fellow content creator Jamie Finn, so many thanks for the battle submission. Now, starting September 26th at 10 a.m. local time, for 5 days, you can evolve Shadow Coughing into Shadow Galarian Weezing for the first time. So if you have a Shadow Coughing, it's absolutely worth evolving. So without further ado, let's hop into the matches and take a look at XL Shadow Galarian Weezing in the Open Ultra League. Hopping into the first match, leading Shadow Galarian Weezing into Virizion, and the opponent is not switching out. Oh my goodness, if they're not switching out, they have to be core broken in the back. These Fairy Winds actually doing real damage in this matchup due to the extra damage that the Galarian Weezing gets from being Shadow. Play Rough is going to be shielded, opponent throwing their charge attack instantly. Galarian Weezing more than happy to take the free Fairy Wind. Opponent is going to farm up. They're going to bring in Shadow Typhlosion. Oh, actually a regular Typhlosion. A bit of a surprise there, and Typhlosion is going to be answered with the Feraligatr. Could have brought in the Golurk, but looking like Jamie is making the read that Golurk may be good in the back, and this could be a bait out. Opponent just going to let this through. In comes Virizion. Virizion now going to have to shield, or it will get fully one-hit by this Ice Beam. And they let it go. Down goes Virizion. In the back is Golurk. They cannot beat the Weezing, and they will resign the match. Hopping into the next match, Shadow Galarian Weezing versus Cresselia. Cresselia, if it's running Future Sight, could be a problem, but that looked to be a charge attack priority tie on 7. That means this is only a Moonblast. Jamie knows it too, as he instantly no-shields. Opponent ends up going for a Grass Knot there, but as long as they don't farm up to a Future Sight, there's no reason for Weezing to shield. That's a pretty large error by the opponent. Even if you don't have Future Sight, you should always at least bluff it. Brutal Swing after Brutal Swing, we're going to see a switch out and a catch onto the Shadow Feraligatr, as Cresselia is going to fire off the Moonblast. Opponent now going to send out Clefable, and this is very fine. Shadow Feraligatr does great into Clefable, especially up energy. That Hydro Landing does so much damage, and a Swift will not knock out here. Jamie's going to call the bait. Opponent goes for a Meteor Mash. That's not going to KO either. Typically, Clefables will be on Swift plus Moonblast, but in this instance, opponent is not going to be on that moveset. In the back is Jellicent, and Jellicent, this could get a little tricky as in comes Golurk. Golurk is going to be using a shield. Do we see the Surf? Yes, it is going to be the Surf. Opponent not going to go for the Shadow Ball. They try for a catch. They don't get the catch, and now Golurk, yeah, this game's over. The opponent, if they got a catch, they had a chance. But now, there's just no chance of winning this game, as Golurk is going to be able to grab the shields, and then from there, if you want to, you can just trust in the Galarian Weezing to win the game. And there's a catch, catching onto the Shadow Galarian Weezing as Jellicent goes for the Surf. Jellicent goes for an undercharge, but they undercharge far too much, and that's going to be game over, as Shadow Brutal Swing is going to knock out the Jellicent. Hopping into the next match, picking up an amazing lead, Shadow Galarian Weezing versus Dragalge. Opponent is going to save switch into Feraligatr, and I really like this decision by Jamie. Chip it with the Brutal Swing, and then just mirror. And now, the opponent is in a position where they're never going to be able to make a play for switch. And it turns out Jamie's Feraligatr actually wins charge attack priority over the opponents. They fully sacrifice it, and they just resign. I cannot blame them for resigning. Great lead in the next match, Weezing into Virizion, opponent save switches into Tentacruel, and Golurk disagrees with that decision. Golurk is going to commit the shield as they go for the Scald. Scald actually not going to debuff there. Golurk could have farmed down, but deciding against it, just wanting to guarantee a knockout. Back in comes Virizion. Virizion going to get hit with a Shadow Punch, and Shadow Punch from Golurk does a lot of damage. That's going to connect. Another Shadow Punch reached as well. Golurk putting in a ton of work versus Virizion. Virizion now into the red health as they're finally going to pick up the knockout with a Leaf Blade. Leaf Blade KOs the Golurk. Back in comes the Weezing. It's going to be a Steelix in the back, and this game should just be over. Steelix is going to fire off Psychic Fangs to try and debuff its way through the Feraligatr, but Feraligatr's pacing is just absolutely unrelenting. Hydro Cannon after Hydro Cannon launched at the Steelix. Steelix going to commit both Protect Shields here to try and survive this onslaught of charge attacks by the Feraligatr, but Feraligatr should be able to shield and make the Hydro. So we are going to see the shield from the Feraligatr. Have to watch for a switch out, anticipating the switch out there. Beautiful prediction by Jamie. He predicted that the opponent would go for the catch. They try it, they're unsuccessful, and now it's going to be a death by a million brutal swings. Brutal swing after brutal swing after brutal swing, the spamminess of Shadow Galarian Weezing. Oh my goodness, the opponent just in absolute shambles in this moment as Shadow Galarian Weezing takes the win. Picking up a good lead in the next match, Galarian Weezing versus Clefable. We're going to see a switch out and a catching onto the Feraligatr as Clefable they went for a Moonblast. That's actually very, very unfortunate. As Moonblast, of course, would be resisted on the Weezing, but it hits for neutral on the Feraligatr. In comes Pangoro. Pangoro, I mean, it's just going to get crushed by the Weezing. You can just bring in the Weezing, throw 3, go for the Play Rough, and this is going to be good night to the Pangoro as it gets one-hit KO'd. Opponent brings in Feraligatr, and oh my goodness, Jamie is so happy to see this Feraligatr here and not on the Golurk. Brutal swing, not going to be shielded, going for another brutal swing. You just really want the opponent to let the Feraligatr go, but they are protecting it. Using a shield is going to complicate things. Does this actually KO? Let's test the bulk here. It does KO, and now Golurk has to try and sweep. Golurk is going to be committing the shield and looking for a farm down. Can Feraligatr make it to another move? Feraligator's going to try. They do not get there, and now Golurk is in a prime position to try and close out this game. If a Moonblast lands, it would be catastrophic, but look at the damage that Golurk can do. Will the opponent go for the Swift Bait here? We are going to see the shield. They do go for the Swift Bait. Does that allow them to get a move? It does. If this is the Swift, this should be a win. If it's the Moonblast, it will not, but it's the Swift. Golurk double resist normal damage and is able to take that win. As we see a 5-0 set there, let's go. All right, we move into the next match, leading against a Gust Pidgeot. Pidgeot got nerfed. This trainer could not let the Pidgeot go, so now they are on Gust. Brutal Swing is going to be shielded. Pidgeots absolutely love to bait, so this no shield is incredible. Opponent, they actually full send. That's got to be a first. Pidgeot's very rarely full send there. I would have no-shielded as well, so I definitely can't fault Jamie for that. Opponent switches out of the debuff Pidgeot into Jellicent, and Jellicent is going to get absolutely shredded by this Feraligatr. But the uncomfortable thing is that if the opponent brings in their third into this Feraligatr instead of the Pidgeot, then you're going to have a Mud Slap user against the Pidgeot, and that's not a great spot to be. So will we see the Pidgeot here? Oh, it's going to be Virizion, and this is looking like an extremely difficult game to win. Ice Beam is going to be shielded. Opponent getting the call right. Just going to send in the Golurk. Fully sacrifice it. This Leaf Blade doesn't one-shot, but it does so much damage. Opponent going to switch into the Pidgeot. The Dynamic Punch is reached. This will do a lot of damage. Dynamic Punch will add up here. Dynamic Punch is going to connect, but it does not do enough damage. And now the opponent can just go for Feather Dances. And Feather Dance is unfortunately going to just be game over here, as Jamie is going to try for a farm down, but the farm down is unsuccessful. Moving into the next match, leading the Shadow Galarian Weezing versus Drifblim. Drifblim, of course, now running Astonish, and Astonish is a clone of the move Mud Slap, so it does some massive, massive damage. This pacing on Galarian Weezing straight forward a Brutal Swing is absolutely wild. Jamie's going to call the bait. He really likes calling baits, and it pays off as they go for the Icy Wind. They're going to bring in Feraligatr. Jamie going to bank a move, bring in his own Feraligatr. He's down energy, but up a shield, so he will still be able to dictate switch advantage. This is actually a crunch Feraligatr. That is not something you see very commonly this season. Hydro Cannon is going to connect. Do you just let this go and farm with the Golurk? Looks like yes, going to let this go. And now to look for farm, you can just bring in the Golurk and get the farm down. 3 Mud Slaps should be enough to KO here. Gonna bring in the Golurk, and there is that farm down. There is still the Drifblim, but Jamie has 2 moves loaded, and there's only 1 shield available. Shadow Punch is going to be shielded, and there's the combo play from the second loaded move. Drifblim is going to get KO'd by the Brutal Swing. In the back is Machamp, and Machamp, oh no, trainer, I'm so sorry. There's nothing that Machamp can do versus the Golurk, and the opponent will concede the match. Oh my goodness, the opponent running Golurk as well. Shadow Galarian Weezing versus Golurk. And look at the Mud Slap damage. My goodness. Brutal Swing is shielded. We're going to see a switch out into Feraligatr. Feraligatr answered by Miltank. And this opponent may actually be running my Shadow Golurk team. If that's the case, then there is going to be a Drapion in the back. And if there's a Drapion in the back, then Jamie's Shadow Golurk should look really good up a shield to potentially sweep this game. Miltank has farmed up a ton of energy. Miltank is going to go for a Thunderbolt, and Thunderbolt is going to be able to pick up the knockout after one additional rollout. In comes the Golurk. Golurk saying, I don't think you're double nuke. I think you're on Thunderbolt plus Body Slam. Oh, they're double nuke! Disaster strikes! Oh no! In comes the Golurk. Opponent, wait! They try for a catch, and that might be the loose con. Oh my goodness, Dynamic Punch, fired, that does a ton of damage. It's charge attack priority, and now just Fairy Wind down. Oh no, the opponent had the game completely won, but they try to get fancy with a catch, and that's gonna cost them everything. As Weezing gets the farm down, and is now one away from a second Brutal Swing. Everything went wrong in an instant, but then the opponent with a tragic misplay puts the game back in a winnable position, and Jamie is able to capitalize. Great lead in the next match. Galarian Weezing versus the Shadow Machamp. Shadow Machamp farms up to a Stone Edge. Weezing gonna let it go. Stone Edge is survivable. Opponent actually running Rock Slide instead. Rock Slide, not a move that I'd recommend on Machamp, just because Rock Slide after the nerf is just not the damage that you're hoping for. Opponent gonna bring in their own Galarian Weezing. Weezing, this is a very tricky matchup here, as everything you throw is going to be resisted. So just gonna try and land these play roughs. Oh my goodness, is that charge attack priority? I didn't see a Fairy Wind sneak. It is charge attack priority. The opponent over farming too much. They play to a CMP tide that they do not win. In comes Feraligatr. Feraligatr would take a lot of damage from a potential play rough. Jamie's going to let it go. The play rough is going to land in the back. Opponent has their own Golurk. These Shadow Claws are honestly very valuable damage, as it can potentially mean that Jamie can farm down, whereas the opponent is not going to be able to do so. Jamie has the two shields, and he's going to need them. Shadow Punch is going to be shielded. Opponent makes another Shadow Punch. Golurk with the double shield farm down play. The opponent, they are not going to stay in this matchup, as they realize there's too much energy, and they will concede. Great lead in the next match, leading the Shadow Galarian Weezing into a Goodra. Opponent save switches Tentacruel, and just like clockwork, out comes Golurk. Golurk, with no debuff here, is going to look to fire off a Shadow Punch to pick up the knockout. And since the opponent led with Goodra, we actually see a shield. That's a pretty surprising shield. As the opponent, they can potentially force a shield, but they cannot win switch advantage. So I guess the opponent wants shields down, but shields down is honestly not going to do a lot for them here. They're actually going to aggressively pivot into the Goodra. So now a Dynamic Punch is stored. Goodra is stuck against the Weezing. And this play pattern to me only makes sense if the opponent is running a team that's ABA weak to the Weezing. Because why else would you switch lock the Goodra and bait this back out? Play rough is going to KO. I wouldn't be surprised to see the Tentacruel re-enter the field of play here shortly. Opponent, actually, no, they send out Golurk. There's a lot of Golurk being used, and I am very happy to see it. I love Golurk. I think it's amazing in this current meta, but you really need shields. Feraligatr snipes down the Golurk, and the opponent will concede the match. What an unbelievably good lead, leading into a Pangoro. Opponent is going to save switch into Drapion. Drapion answered with the Golurk. Golurk does have to commit shields here. As Drapion, of course, its energy is so deadly. We're actually going to see a double shield from the Golurk. Golurk from full HP does actually survive a Night Slash, but we did see a defense drop. And that means that a Night Slash may not be survivable anymore. Dynamic Punch is shielded up. Golurk going for a Shadow Punch. Let's test the opponent's counting here. How good is their counting? They know their Golurk counts. They end up no shield in there. And now Pangoro will be able to pick up the knockout with a Night Slash. Down goes Golurk, but this energy from Pangoro goes nowhere. In the back is Feraligatr, and Feraligatr will be chipped with a Brutal Swing. This is valuable damage, and now it's the Battle of Gators. Going to fire off this Hydro Cannon, grab the final shield from the opponent. But the opponent has a lot of energy on their Feraligatr. Both these Feraligatr are Shadow. And with the Shadow Claw damage that's already occurred, it looks like a Hydro will actually be able to knock out here. This game is going to come down to the wire. Hydro Cannon picks up the knockout. In comes the Weezing. Weezing will lose charge attack priority because the opponent overfarmed by 1. Jamie knows that. He's not going to fall for it instead. He's just going to look to farm. Can he potentially farm down with the Weezing? It's going to be close. Opponent tries to snipe with the Pangoro. Pangoro is going to get knocked out with the Play Rough. It's a simultaneous KO, and the game ends at a tie. Hopping into the final match, Shadow Galarian Weezing versus Licky Licky. Licky Licky, honestly, in the Ultra League, it's a bit of a toss-up. Some run Shadow Ball, some run Earthquake. And if it's Earthquake, you really do not want that move to land on the Weezing. So we are going to see a switch out into Feraligatr. Feraligatr no shields. Oh my goodness, it's Hyper Beam. Oh no, that is not what I was expecting to see at all. In comes a Kanto Muck. Muck takes the Hydro Cannon, gets farmed down. My goodness, in comes Golurk. Golurk is going to look for farm. Opponent, I believe this is enough for the Dark Pulse, so we will see the shield from the Golurk, and Golurk trades a shield for a big energy head start. In the back is Malamar, going for the harder hitting Dynamic Punch here, hoping to sneak it past the shields, but the opponent says no. The switch into Weezing. Weezing can survive whatever they throw here, because typically they're going to be running Foul Play and Superpower. Neither move is going to do a lot. In comes Licky Licky. Licky Licky to be met with a Play Rough. Play Rough into the Licky Licky, picks up the knockout. That's that extra damage. Weezing only able to make it to a Brutal Swing. Opponent does not have to shield it, but if they let it go, they're probably getting farmed down. But now they're just getting KO'd with a Shadow Punch as back into the field enters Shadow Golurk, knocking out Malamar, and that is a good game. All in all, Shadow Galarian Weezing is a very fun side grade. The extra damage can be beneficial in a lot of situations. There can be situations where the regular is preferred just from a bulk aspect. So if you do have Shadow Coughing, absolutely worth evolving into the Shadow Galarian Weezing. Because at worst, like the absolute worst case scenario, it performs very similarly to the regular, and the regular is already very solid, especially with the update to Brutal Swing, where now it's straightforward to Brutal Swing. So overall, big thanks to Jamie for sending in these battles. I do have a Shadow Galarian Weezing for the Great League, but I didn't have one for Ultra, so I'm very excited to get to showcase it in the Ultra League, so that way people can see what it looks like, how does it play, without spending some 600,000 to 700,000 Stardust themselves. Anyways, thank you guys so much for watching. If you're enjoying the content, make sure to leave a like and subscribe to the channel if you haven't. And a special thank you as always to our members here on YouTube. The support guys provide is sincerely appreciated. So thank you guys oh so very much. And until next time, I've been HomeSliceHenry.